their apology, they can shove their apology up there. And Hemi Panarin definitely looked like he got his mojo back. He got an assist. I was wrong. Big.
Welcome back, everybody, to the final buzzer with John Falkowski. And, of course, the person you need for that is John Falkowski right there. But big trade news is happening, and that's one reason why we're breaking on in. I, of course, am your host, Mark Williams, but I'm really not the host because it's Mr. John Falkowski that's doing this. I am watching this big time. Without further ado, here is Mr. John Falkowski.
No, I'm not really the host of this. I mean, I guess we formatted it under that way, but no, this is our show. It's not really my show or anything like that. And definitely very happy to have on with us. And I know he's psyched for Elimination Chamber tonight, Mr. Jim Beeringer.
What's going on, fellas? Glad to be back after a successful show on Wednesday. Always a pleasure to be here, bringing some instant analysis to a great Saturday so far.
Yeah, and it's going to be an interesting Saturday, but we'll start with the trade that was made for right now. We're going to have plenty of other trades that we're going to be breaking all throughout the week, but the New York Rangers have moved Ryan Lindgren to the Colorado Avalanche. They're going to retain 50% of his salary. Jimmy Vesey and Hank Kempf.
Yeah.
Yes. For it's Juuso Parssinen, right?
Yeah.
Juuso Parssinen, Calvin DeHaan, and a 2025 second rounder and a 2025 fourth rounder, which, by the way, I think that's the bigger news of this trade, Phil, because Rangers had no draft picks. So that's really going to help out. The real question is right here. I'll start with you, Phil. Where do the New York Rangers go from here? And is a fire sale coming?
So, funny enough, we keep going to do the same thing. But yeah, I don't know if this necessarily means a fire sale for the Rangers. The Rangers have a bunch of different directions that they can go from here. They retain, so Ryan Lindgren's getting $4.5 million, so that's $2.25 million to retain. That's really nothing for the Rangers right now, considering the cap space that they made with the Trouba deal earlier on this year. And they're moving Jimmy Vesey's salary as well in this deal. So they're getting rid of some salary. They have the availability and the cap flexibility to make a bunch of more moves if they really want to try to beef up and go for a playoff spot. I know last night's loss was disappointing considering they were the better team in that game, at least in my opinion. The analytics from Steven Valiquette were actually really good for the Rangers. Igor Shesterkin really kind of cost them that game last night. But
who would have thought that going behind the net and throwing the puck into a maze of people would have ended up with a goal?
The other goal, he misplays the damn thing, and he's just no communication with his defenseman. He needs to stay in his net, but that we'll talk about that another time. But yeah, the Rangers really can either, if they want to go and start a fire sale, they can. And you got to wonder if you're Chris Drury and you see that performance last night and you see the performance against Buffalo earlier on in the week, like, can you really be happy with that as a general manager? So I really like the trade from the aspect that Ryan Lindgren needed to go. Do I think Calvin DeHaan is an upgrade? No. But I mean, it's a body. And it really, when Adam Fox gets back, likely, he's going to be out of the lineup maybe, unless they go make another move, whether it's a Carson Soucy or something like that. But I do agree with some of the people in the chat. They're not good enough. Maybe it is time to sell, but they have a bunch of different directions they can go from here. So this Ranger team is going to be very interesting to watch over the next 6 days. So fire sale, buying, selling, I don't know. We'll see.
And yeah, you're going to be seeing a lot of different changes, and it'll be interesting what direction they go and how much they might want to strip this down. Jim, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, look, we discussed it on Wednesday. I think it was one of our topics in the A block or even in Bar Talk. We were talking about Ryan Lindgren. We were talking about the Rangers being sellers. And I think this was a great move. I think this is a move that needed to happen. Let's be honest here, like $4.5 million. You kind of have the replacement for Ryan Lindgren. Will Borgen is part of that hockey trade that Seattle made. You made, Capo Caco goes out there and you're already paying him $4.1 million. And Ryan Lindgren, let's be honest, is probably not getting the extension from the Rangers to begin with. So it's good to get assets for him. And you got draft picks, right? And you got bodies back, right? Like Calvin DeHaan is who he is, right? That's the type of player. But apparently they love the UC Parsons kid. They've been looking after him for a while. So if he can be a player in the system and on the team, that's going to be really helpful. But the draft picks and the draft capital is what makes this a win for Chris Drury. Not to mention you're shedding salary, and you have to retain, but guess what? It comes off the books at the end of the year anyway, and then you could go make a bigger move, right? And it started, right? This change of philosophy, it started. Jacob Trouba stuff, the Capo Caco stuff. That's the mindset and the change of the direction of this team. Everybody thought they could go back to the Eastern Conference Final and make a deep playoff run. Clearly, Chris Drury wasn't happy with this team, so he's changing everything. And it's a good return for a player like Ryan Lindgren. I don't know, a lot of people thought you'd be getting this kind of return. Plus, you throw in Jimmy Vesey, right? Colorado needs depth scoring still. They're still relying on the same guys. So it's a good trade to me. And I agree. I think there's going to probably potentially be more coming. Like, see what else you can get. You have Riley Smith. That's a player. I mean, you're not going to get much for him, but that's another player that you should be moving at the deadline, right? Everybody's looking for scoring forwards and guys that can help in their bottom six. Throw him around. See who else you can move. I mean, look, we were joking about this yesterday, and this may blow up the chat, but Phil put it out, and Anthony put the stuff out about Alexis Lafreniere. Go look at his contract and go look when that trade protection goes in. You really want to shake something up on this roster? That could be a guy. I'm not saying it's going to happen at the deadline, but you look at his contract, go look at that trade protection, and when it kicks in, there's value there.
Yeah. Go ahead, Phil.
No. Go ahead, Mark.
No. I you guys know my opinion about that, because I think that's one of those bad business type of moves that if you do that, players will notice and it will reflect badly on the New York Rangers. Now, Jim, you're one of the guys that brings a philosophy of, all right, I don't care. You bring that Vegas line. We're in the winning business, not the friendship business. And it's just, but I think if you do that, then your kind of word means nothing. And I'd be concerned about that. Could it be a smart move? Absolutely. I would. He's not the only one I would move before the no trade protection kicks in. If we could hint at someone else. But I just don't see it happening. I do understand why everybody's making that speculation, Phil.
Yeah, I think it's good for Colorado in the sense that they get a guy that they want. I think they wanted more of a physical defensive presence in a guy like Lindgren. And now Lindgren's going to be in a more sheltered role and not playing 20-plus minutes a night on the top pair next to his best buddy anymore. So, I mean, he'll probably be a more productive player. If he re-signs in Colorado or wherever he's going, I don't think he's going to get the $4 million that he was getting previously. I think people have realized that this guy doesn't belong in a top pairing role, and it'll probably hurt his net gainings once he hits free agency. But I think he'll be a more productive player elsewhere, especially if you have a decent puck mover with him on a second or a third pairing. For Jimmy Vesey's sake, he'll probably get into this lineup. I mean, I look at their lineup. You have Nathan McKinnon, Martin Necas, Nichushkin, Middlestat, Lehkonen, Colton, Drouin, Miles Wood. And then, I mean, it's really their fourth line, and their depth players are kind of like Jack Drury, Logan O'Connor, Kelly Parker, Yoel Kiviranta, and Vesey himself. So he's still going to have to fight, but I think he could get into the lineup. For the Rangers, you needed to get rid of that salary, and you needed to move Lindgren. It wasn't working. You weren't going to re-sign him, as Jimmy said before. And Parsonen is the type of player that they're looking to bring in. That's the type of player that they've been trying to overhaul. You brought in JT Miller. You moved out Philip Hedl. Does Mika Zibanejad go in the offseason, even with his increased play since Miller's arrival? Does he go? Does Chris Kreider go? I mean, this is another move to me that signifies a culture change. And when the JT Miller trade happened, I said that this was the first in the line of culture changing moves that were going to change around the makeup and the culture of this team. It needed to change. You're seeing more of it. So this is a good move by Chris Drury. Jim, as you said before, you didn't think Ryan Lindgren was not going to get this type of return. Not only does he get NHL bodies, but he gets picks that the Rangers desperately lacked, especially a second. Even if it's a better of type situation like where the Rangers have with Tarasenko in St. Louis a couple of years back. I mean, it's still a second round pick that they lack. They've had no second round picks until like the end of time practically. So, for this team to get a second round pick and a fourth round pick, if they want to buy, and they can use those picks if they want to now. But I don't know if I see that. So 6 days away, time will tell.
Yeah, tell me more about Parsonen.
Yeah, you know what? When he was a rookie, I was really high on him. I know that he had a nice year shooting percentage wise. He came right out of the gate and was like 12%, 14%, and then even shooting 15% this year. But he has some potential there. I mean, he had 25 points in 45 games as a rookie with Nashville, and that was a decent Nashville team, not the Nashville team we know this year. Right. But he got traded earlier on this year to Colorado. It hasn't worked out. There is some room for growth. I mean, he's only 24. He plays center. He can play wing. He has played wing in Nashville. I've seen him play wing. I'm pretty sure that when he scored, I think his first NHL goal was actually against the Rangers. If I could be wrong about that.
I think you might be right.
I'm going to check on that. Keep going.
But the first game that he played against the Rangers, he had a really nice goal in. But I do like this acquisition because I think he's a piece that can fit going forward. And again, he plays a straight line type game. He's physical. He'll grind down low. He'll go to the dirty areas to score goals. This is a player that they need a little more of. Like it almost reminds me of a poor man's Will Cooley. And he's been around a little longer than Cooley and has played more games, I think, overall. But Will Cooley has been more of a regular. So if Parsonen can stick in this lineup, that's a big win for the Rangers.
Yeah, huge win for them. Like you said, north-south game. And the best part is he's versatile, right? Center, wing, those are the type of guys you're looking for, especially with you have the way your bottom six has been playing. Well, they didn't play much last night, which again,
don't get me started.
Yeah, I know. No, I saw your tweets. I just wanted to throw that in there because I completely 100% agree with you. I didn't get it, but this is a guy you could throw in there north-south game, right? Center, wing, he could work well with the young guys. Maybe you throw him in the top six, see what he's got. See if he can get those guys playing the right way. I like this addition. I like this player. I liked him in Nashville. Again, another player that Nashville just didn't, draft pick of David Poile. They didn't really want to stick around, see what they got out of him. Goes to Colorado. Really, again, it was a good add in that trade with the goalie, but again, he really didn't fit because they already had all those types of players anyway. Now he comes to the Rangers. I think he's gonna go back to the player he was that first year in Nashville.
Sorry, I was just waving hi right here to Chris. I haven't seen him in a while in the chat. By the way, guys, you're right. Parsonen, his first NHL goal against the New York Rangers was November 12th of 2 years ago. But 2023, yes. So, but as James is also asking, how's he as a skater?
He's a decent. I was actually just typing to James. He's a decent skater. He's not somebody that's slow. He's not a burner by any means.
No,
but we're not worrying about like Capo Caco and how his skating is kind of like plodding and slow, and it takes him a bit to get the top speed. Parsonen, I think, is a better skater. but yeah, I do think that he can definitely be a very effective bottom six player for this team going forward. You want to get cheap ones that you can develop. And I know that this was a discussion a while back with us, Mark, and even Anthony was in on this, saying that, you want to be able to draft and develop the bottom six centers, especially when Rempe and Edstrom came along last year. You're like, whoa, we've got some effective bottom six guys that are now making NHL minimum salaries, and we're not overpaying for Barclay Goodrows or Riley Smiths or something like that. So no, James, he's not a plug. I do think that he can be a piece going forward for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I like his skating ability. Some guys, in the bottom six are not great skaters, and it takes them time. That was one of his true, along with his skill, was one of his abilities coming out when he was drafted. Again, it's a good trade. It's a good hockey trade. Let's put it that way. It's another good hockey trade, right? Like we talked about with the Borgen deal, right? That's a hockey trade, and it's worked out for both teams. So I like the deal here for Chris Drury and the Rangers. I really, really do. I think this is, could they still sell? Absolutely. I mean, they're again, like I said, Riley Smith's a player you can get something for, right? I think somebody will want a player like that just to have it come playoff time. Contender.
Yeah, I definitely I could see him being next to go. I know that marine biologist said it. But yeah, I do think that Riley Smith could be next to go. I think that would be an asset that the Rangers could recoup a third, maybe a second for if they're lucky. But someone who can help a team out depth wise in the playoffs, like you said. But listen, everybody expecting this right here, you're probably going to have to wait until the offseason.
Yeah, the draft.
I don't see that happening right now. I don't. So be patient. That's probably going to be a bigger offseason deal.
Right.
I do think it's very possible he gets moved, but I do think that there is something to be looked at this offseason. So just be patient, people.
I agree with that 100%. I think he could definitely get moved in the offseason. Why not, right? If you're gonna start making changes, that's a change you can make in the offseason. It'd be tough to do right now unless you have the right parties involved, right? And you had to been talking about it for a while, and then okay, we got everything in place. Bam, here it comes.
Well, the happiest person about this trade has got to be Zach Jones, because the Rangers bringing in anyone to play defense means he's probably going to be watching. So that's got to be the best thing about that. So you look at the Rangers though right now, all their RFAs, they got two UFAs, which is DeHaan obviously and Jonathan Quick. I don't think either one of them are really getting moved. They're going anywhere. You have Riley Smith, that's UFA. He's the one that we're saying, yeah, he's going to go. What the chances do you think Keandre Miller gets moved?
Ooh, wow.
That was tough. I mean, I could see it though. Like, I'd say right now, maybe 40% they move him percentage wise. But again, they're teams that are desperate, right? Like we know he's been linked to Edmonton before, right? Does Edmonton want to say, hey, see, we can take a run on Miller? But they have bigger issues than just guys that can't defend. They need goaltending up in Edmonton. So, I mean, it would help if they play defense in front of their goaltender all the time too. But, I mean, so it's interesting because I think Miller can get them a good return. But again, what are they asking for? Are they going to want players back in return? Or is it futures, picks and prospects, stuff like that? Again, it's all about what Chris Drury wants for this type of player. And again, he's going to be doing a new contract if you get him.
Yeah, I want to say maybe somewhere between 35 to 50% chance that Miller gets moved. I have a hard time bringing myself to wanting to give him that next deal, especially if that supposed 6 by 6.5 deal, whatever it was that was floating around. I don't want him Yeah, I don't want that deal. I
No.
really don't.
No.
I think he's too inconsistent. I think he's a guy that might never able to be put it all together, because I think everything is up here with him. I think it's all mental. I know people will talk about skating is great. I mean, he's not really a physical presence. I mean, it depends on the night. I mean,
I
if you
bring
get
as
him
much of a
mad-
physical presence to the New York Rangers as he does.
no, yeah, it depends on the
You
night.
might bring more, Mark.
I mean, Mark might be a little more physical. That's, I mean,
Well,
but,
no, 20, geez, am I almost up to 30 years? Yeah, 30 years ago, I was a little bit more physical.
but yeah, it's sad that they're getting to this point with this player, but it comes to a time where you have to make that decision on what you're going to do with this guy going forward, and I can't take that risk. Even with the cap going up, I can't take that risk for this guy. It's not worth it. I mean, he's not really worth much more than what he's getting right now. Is 40 points an aberration for him, or is that something that he can do regularly? So I just don't think that it's something that he can do regularly. I think that he's just too inconsistent of a player, and I don't think he'll ever figure it out. So if there was maybe something that opened up with Buffalo, like for Bowen Byram, I would send him there.
So you got a hockey trade, right? We're talking hockey trade. I think, that's something you have to look at too, right? Okay, where does he fit? Because again, Byram up in Buffalo, right? He's on the left side. He's the left shot playing the right side. Is that really helping his development up there?
I don't know.
I mean, never mind his physical nature that everybody keeps bringing up with Keandre Miller. 69 giveaways this year.
Yeah, not good.
He is a turnover machine.
Yeah.
You think about returns. Really, that's what it comes down to. I think if Drury is blown away with an offer, I think he absolutely moves him. But what is going to be the return? And Evan's talking here a first, and then a second or a third, and then a B or C level prospect. Is that enough to move him? I mean, to me personally, I think that if they move him, they want a comparable young NHL talent back in return.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way that I see him being moved. Will that happen? I don't know. Byram is the only one that I look at and say, hey, you know what? There's a fit there. And if there's a change of scenery, and it seems, I don't know why. I mean, because he's playing well for them, but why they're looking to move on from Byram. But if there's a change of scenery to be made, then maybe it is Byram for Miller.
It'd be interesting. It'd definitely be interesting. But like I said, they're loaded on that left side. I didn't understand why they acquired a left shot defenseman when they already had 3 guys signed long term on the left side. Like, it didn't make sense. And then they have to plug them in on the right side. See, the Rangers could use a guy on that left side. Like a Byram, right? Like that would definitely be helpful. So that's a hockey trade, and it makes sense. Two guys that are due contracts. It makes that's something that you would have to consider if you're Chris Drury. Like, okay, Bo Byram and some picks, and then we'll figure out everything compensatory after that. Like, I think that's the starting point. Let's be honest.
Kind of feel a little bit for Bo Byram because, I mean, he just has not found a place really where he's going to have a chance. Colorado, obviously, they were loaded. Buffalo, they had their best prospects or all their defensemen. So when you're behind Power and you're behind Dahlin, it really wasn't going to.
And Danielson was on that side too. Don't forget.
Yeah. So, at least maybe if he goes to the Rangers, maybe there's something else. They're like, or maybe he finds a home.
Well, and the weird thing is like that trade just came out of the blue, right? Casey Middlestat for Bo Byram, and Byram was actually playing really well for Colorado. But, they needed a second line center. I never thought Middlestat was that guy for them. And it doesn't sound like Colorado thinks he is either.
Yeah.
So, that's the thing. And you had a defensive prospect in Bo Byram. that you could have slotted in your top 4, and now you don't have that.
Now, Evan asked if I would move, if we would move Miller for Jake Wallman. No.
No.
And I know Wallman looked good next to Mo Seider for a bit, but I'm not doing that. I think that's another defenseman that he played well because of the guy next to him for a bit, even though Wallman helped Seider a bit too. But Seider wasn't playing well next to Sherratt, who really isn't all that good.
No.
So, that's a no for me on Wallman. I think with Byram, the thing for me is that Miller is so inconsistent in both ends. Like, there are nights where he can give you some points here and there, or his defense is really good. And then there are other nights where his defense is just complete trash.
Yeah.
So it's to me, if Byram, at least if he lacks defensively, I know that he's going to give me points consistently. So at least I know that I'm getting one end of the table consistently and consistently enough to play the minutes that he'll garner. So that's why, part of why I would move on from Miller and move him for Byram. But if this is going to happen, that would be interesting.
That would be interesting. I mean, we know Shea Theodore's on LTIR. Like, let's be honest, we all know it's coming.
Yeah.
Right? And if he's not there already, that would be interesting because again, what are they giving up and how much is the Rangers willing to, like, eat on the salary too? Like, are they going to take it all on,
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
How much can they eat? How much are they willing to eat? And, because he's got term left on his deal.
Yeah, he does, right? Like, he still has a few years left on that deal.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 2 after this. So, I mean, I can't imagine them eating $3.25 million because that would be a lot. But it's not 3 years. It's only 2 after this.
Yeah, so it's like 2.5. It's 3/4 of a year, I guess, if you want to really be minute about it. But yeah, 2 years left that contract. It'd be interesting because I think Vegas. Look, I know Kelly McCrimmon said, it's gonna be a quieter deadline for us. Yeah, okay, I'll believe that when I see it because you guys just traded for Thomas Hertl last year, and that.
Yeah, exactly. 10 minutes ago before the deadline, they landed Thomas Hertl.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be an interesting move, but I don't know what Vegas would give up to get him.
Well, this is where I've often said that Kreider's going to create a bidding war. And when you talk about a guy, I think he's got the 7th most or 6th most power play goals over the last 4 years. But and he's got that net front presence. I just wonder which team is going to actually bid to go get him.
Right.
And once they do, he's a guy that's clutch in the playoffs. He could change around a lot of futures for your team.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't have that team just yet. I've always said Colorado, because I can imagine going to Colorado. But there's probably other ones.
What about, I'll throw this one out there. What about a team like, and I'm not saying this will happen, but they have the cap space to do it, and they would have to figure out who would be leaving after this year. What about a team like Dallas?
For Kreider?
Yeah. I'm just throwing this out here, like just spitballing campfire stuff.
Well, they lost Joe Pavelski, who is the deflection master, along with Chris Kreider. I know Kreider's got more deflection goals, but I think that would be a good fit, Phil.
I have a tough time with it just because a big part of their cap space is the guys that they have on LTIR. So between Sagan and Nils Lundqvist, it's $11.1 million exactly in LTIR cap space right now. I mean, Nils Lundqvist is a RFA next year. They'll have to make a decision on him, and I don't know if I could see them even keeping him at this point. So because he hasn't been all that great for them.
Nope.
I wonder where. So next year, Jamie Benn is a UFA.
Mm-hmm.
He's 35. He's going to be 36. Mikael Granlund comes off. Matt Duchene comes off the books, and Matt Duchene is a bargain right now. He's like a point per game, and he's making $3 million against the cap. Evgeny Dadonov.
It helps that you get bought out, and then you go over there, and it doesn't really matter what you make.
Yeah. I mean, Wyatt Johnston and Maverick Bork are due RFA raises, and Wyatt Johnston's going to get big money.
Yeah.
They're going to sign him long term. They're not going to mess around. So I don't know if there's really a place for Chris Kreider there with their situation, because I could see them bringing back Ben at probably close to half of what he's making now, that 9.5. That ain't going to – I don't know. I could see what you're saying, why like they would do it, but
the dollar's got to make sense. No, I hear you, and don't forget Heiskanen is going to be there too. Like, well, if they decide to put him there, but they're already there. But Heiskanen's not playing the rest of the season, regular season anyway, for Dallas. So, and if Sagan comes back earlier than expected, then you can make that flip. Just throwing it out there because again, teams that could have cap space and make moves. I think Ben's going to end up staying. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think Ben's going to stay. It just makes sense.
Yeah, I don't see him leaving either.
No.
But I know what one thing, like, fans are going to look at this trade and then wonder whether or not it's beginning of a fire sale, whether it's just a lateral move, which is what we're saying as well. But also they're going to look at the standings and say, well, there's what is it? It's 23 games ago. Yeah, 23 games ago, they're only 4 points behind Red Wings or Columbus, which one of those teams is going to get 2 points today. And
unless it's a 3-point game.
You don't want a 3-point game.
Unless you don't want a 3-point game. Oh, we got Mr. Anthony LaRocco joining us right now. Coming on in late. But it's just that.
Okay, Ali. Muhammad over there.
It's just that when you look at the Rangers, though, there's so many injuries. You're not going to have Fox for the next month. You got to be realistic right here.
Yeah.
How's it going, guys? Hi, Leo. Hi, Wicked. It's funny. Right before the trade, I texted Mark, and I was just joking around with him because, like, Mark is, and I also mentioned this in our group earlier, Phil, but Jim, Mark is like James Duthie. He hates when trades happen before the trade deadline. So I texted him like, you got lucky yesterday. On day 7, there were no trades. I'm like, I have a feeling you're not going to get as lucky today on day 6. And then, sure enough, a minute later, the trade happened. But and I'm sure you guys touched on a lot of this already. But good on Drury to recognize that Lindgren wasn't going to be retained. So you move him. And for me, the biggest pieces in this deal, the picks, because I mean, let's face it, Calvin DeHaan, he's at this point, he's a depth defenseman, and Parsonen's like a third, fourth line guy, but it's the draft capital that's important because that gives Drury ammo that he can use in another trade for a player or just to restock, or not restock, but to make your system, even your prospect pool, even stronger. So good deal for the Rangers. And I guess the question is that you all been asking is what's next? Is it Riley Smith, which you might as well trade at this point, right? Chris Kreider, who knows? So next 6 days are going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's for me. Yeah, that was really it. The draft capital, getting that back, and the fact that Lindgren got bodies. Evan brought it up in the chat before. If Lindgren got bodies back and picks, do you look to move a guy like Keandre Miller sooner than later? Especially with his contract status coming up, this offseason. So I don't know if I could see Miller getting moved right now. Maybe in the offseason. I do think that Drury's going to make some big changes. Because as I said, when they made the JT Miller trade, that was the first in a line of, I think, what's going to be several culture-changing moves. And this right here is another one, and kind of also just getting value for an asset that was about to just go out the door anyway.
Yep.
So, like you said, good on Chris Drury to do that. But I think these next 6 days are going to be interesting because there are some other players that the Rangers could end up moving. Like Riley Smith is everyone's talking about. You wonder if a Chris Kreider trade is possible, but I do think that's an off-season move. And do the Rangers go and try to bring in maybe someone like Trent Frederick? Like, we know they've looked at him. We know they've had interest in a guy like him. He fits what they want to bring in. I know he's a UFA. I'm not sure if he is going to get $4 or $5 million or something like that for the season that he's had this year.
Mm-hmm.
But could that be something that they would explore before the deadline?
Well, that's what the man down there is. Over here, Anthony predicted in our trade predictions.
I saw that.
I mean, look, there's definitely going to be a market for Trent Frederick. That's the thing, right? There's definitely a market for him. Like, the teams are going to be calling teams that need centers because like everybody needs a center. And I think he'd be a good fit for the Rangers for what they want to do. I agree with that. Like, I think he's a good fit there, but he's a good fit for a lot of teams too. Yeah. And it all depends on the price, right? If the top guys are not there, the value is going to go up for a guy like Trent Frederick.
Yeah, you know what, too? The deadline, I mentioned this last year, too, but the deadline isn't really a traditional buyer-seller anymore. If you look at it, the last couple of years, you have teams that make hockey trades. Last year, the deal between the Avalanche and the Sabres, right? The Bowen Byram, Casey Middlestat, like that wasn't a selling or buying move. That was a hockey trade. And so you have to wonder could Chris Drury explore that avenue too? Could he make a deal where he makes a hockey trade? I saw when you guys first started, I heard when you guys bring up Lafreniere, like could Drury do something like that? Could he trade Lafreniere in a hockey deal for another young player? So there's a couple different avenues they can kind of go through here.
I do think that if Drury buys any more, he's buying with the mindset of a long-term impact. Like, he's not going to buy rentals this year. I don't think you should at this point. If you're going to buy rentals to try to make the playoffs with this team and get smacked in the first round, maybe win the first round if you're lucky, depending on the matchup, I don't think that's smart. I think that's poor asset management. But if you're looking to make trades with long-term impacts, like let's just say they go and they get a Trent Frederick, they bring him in. The obvious inclination there is that they're going to do everything they can to sign him. And yes, Steve, they were scouting that game between the Sabres and the Canes. So that is something to look out for, whether it's due diligence or whether they're targeting somebody. But I do think that this is the right approach here. Tuck, McLeod, those are guys that you can bring in and they could have long-term, especially Ryan McLeod, who's a restricted free agent. Yeah. Tuck has term left on his deal. He's older. But Ryan McLeod, that's your Filipino replacement right there. Long-term, too. Yeah. That's a very good third-line center. And I think any team would kill to have a guy like him.
But there's a Sabres player that you didn't mention that just appeared on Saravalli's board yesterday, which raised eyebrows. AJ Peterka.
Yeah.
Now that's a guy that sound like Chris Collinsworth. Now there's a guy, but he's a guy if he's available. I mean, first off, why would the Sabres trade him? Kevin Adams would. I don't understand that, but there's a lot of things I don't understand the Sabres do. But Chris Drury should be all over him. I mean, why not? He fits the timeline, right?
Yeah, I know that people are saying Lafreniere for Peterka. I mean, we will be there. The Pep Guardiola quote. Yeah, I know everybody likes Peterka. Listen, I would be all for that too. I don't know if I would move Lafreniere for him. And yes, Peterka is having the better year. Lafreniere had the better year last year. I would rather save Lafreniere for a big move like Brady Tkachuk. And I know that, Brady Tkachuk's not available and so on. And I've heard that. But when there's smoke, there's fire. And I do think that this offseason is going to be pivotal. So if they get offered a young talent like that in return for Brady Tkachuk and then some, I think Staios would be more open to listening to deals.
One question that's there, because you get a lot of people that are there's been some chatter about this, but trading Adam Fox before his no move clause kicks in. Jim, could you really see that happening?
Not really. No. I mean, look, you
No.
never say never in this league, right? Because Wayne Gretzky got traded, and nobody thought he'd leave Edmonton. So, and
Brian Leach got traded on his birthday.
right, exactly. So, I mean,
A
like
week after he told Sather not to trade him. Remember that.
So, I mean, anything is possible. But here's the issue: is last trade protection doesn't kick in for like 2 more seasons. If you go look at Puckpedia, I was looking at it last night just to double check myself when I sent that comment to the fellas over there. It's not for like a couple of seasons if you look at it, and it's modified too. So you could do it. As for Adam Fox, yeah, I mean, if there's value there and somebody says I'll give you a stud defense, an NHL defenseman in return, sure, but I don't think the Rangers are going to do it. He's a cornerstone guy back there. He's your number one defenseman. I'm not sure you're going to give up on him because he's having a down year and he's hurt and everything. He probably wasn't right coming into the season after what happened at the end of last season. So I wouldn't make that move unless somebody's offering me a true number one defenseman back in return. That's just something I wouldn't do as a GM. But they'd listen, but I wouldn't do it.
And also, there's the PR aspect of the local kid that kind of worked his way to get here and won a Norris Trophy. Then they're just gonna give up on him. So I don't know, but yeah, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that would actually riot. Like my wife would riot on that. She constantly says we don't deserve Adam Fox. So that's for one.
Yeah, I would be shocked if Adam Fox was traded. I mean, if that was even a consideration, that's like an off-season move. But I would be highly surprised if that ever.
Yeah, me too. I would be very surprised if that happened.
Yeah, no, he's not going anywhere. So he's obviously been real messed up since that the Sebastian Aho dirtbag hit from last season, and then Nick Jensen re-injured it in the playoffs with another knee-on-knee hit. Why there's no suspensions for these types of hits, I don't know. The NHL needs to do a better job on these. But and not to go off tangent, just wanted to get that in there.
No,
but Adam Fox is not going anywhere. And I know that people are calling him Adam Foe or Adam Fox, like he's a fake or something like that. Like, no, this guy now finally has, hey, John, how are you, man? But this guy finally now has an anchor off of his leg. I mean, Ryan Lindgren and you can respect Ryan Lindgren, you can appreciate Ryan Lindgren, but Ryan Lindgren is another defenseman in a long line of Rangers going back to Barry Beck, Reijo Ruotsalainen, and others that have been miscast and played above their standings. Those guys were like number one defensemen on these Ranger teams when they were number 2s or 3s on championship contenders. Michael Roosevelt and Marek Malik were once the Rangers' top pairing for a 3-year span, nonetheless. So, I mean, Jeff Bukaboom played with Brian Leach for, 10 years?
Yep.
Almost, you can't have that. You can't have defensemen like that playing 20-plus minutes per game. They're not designed for that type of work. And the mileage that they got out of Lindgren, good for them because they turned a declining Rick Nash, actually a near dead Rick Nash, Ryan Lindgren, Keandre Miller, and others. So good for the Rangers to get what they got out of Lindgren, and now they turned it into more picks, a bottom 6 center, and another defenseman. So, I mean, they did what they could here.
I do have to say one word of caution because, Ryan Lindgren got moved in this deal, and now he is never going to be, or at least not unless it's like Team USA or something like that in the IHF stuff. But he's not going to be with Adam Fox probably ever again. But the other thing to caution, though, is Jeff Bukaboom had to retire because of concussions, and Brian Leach, though he was still a very effective, great defenseman, he wasn't at the Norris Trophy level once Bukaboom was gone. That's one of the things just a caution about they had to try to figure out who was going to be his defense partner. And sometimes when you have a partner that the chemistry is just so good, they never really get that partner that can match on that. And I'll point over to Anthony and lead him in with this one, sort of like former New York Islander Devon Taves. I said his name right, Anthony, and Cale Makar.
Yeah. I mean, Taves was a great defenseman. He was a guy that he was a later round pick, but he developed slowly. Islanders are patient with him, and he became a very good defenseman. Unfortunately, he was a cap casualty, and in retrospect, it was a terrible move. But as far as Ryan Lindgren, the Rangers, again, it was they got him, they brought him along nicely. He developed, turned into a warrior for the Rangers, was a mainstay on their defense, but it was time for him to go. Well, with Mark,
Oh
he's
God!
known for botching names. So.
Well, first off, there's plenty of names that all of us botch, but in this one, I always call him Devon Taves, and you always correct me with no, it's Devon. I'm like,
Yeah,
geez.
been hoovered up.
Yeah.
Quinnipiac product, by the way, Devon Taves.
Yeah, that's the thing. You got this for Lindgren. You can go in so many different directions here for the Rangers, whether it's fire sale, whether it's buy. But I Mark should get a gold star.
Yes, you got fireworks.
Hey, how about that? Fireworks.
Yeah, that's great. Wow.
I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah.
So two thumbs up is fireworks. There you go. How about that, Apple?
Yeah, Al, you're doing this on an Apple computer, so yeah, that's why you get to do that.
Yeah, because if I did just that, I get a like bubble.
Yeah.
Really?
I think this is balloons.
I have a Mac computer. I don't have that. Not for me.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm on the Mac laptop. So.
Look at you.
Look at you.
How cute! How cute. Yeah, I like the fact that they made this deal. I think that Seth Jones is not happening.
No.
I don't know why people are talking about Seth Jones in the chat. They have 3 right side defensemen already, and they're not going to add another $9.5 million defenseman on the right side. So even though Seth Jones, I think, could help this team out a bit, I don't see that happening at all.
No, Seth Jones is probably, he might get traded, but in hearing his name being linked to Florida and Dallas,
he ain't going to the Rangers.
He's going to Dallas. Dallas needs right side help so badly, and Cody Ceci is not the guy that you want to bring in to fix your right side issues. So yeah, I could definitely see Seth Jones going to Dallas.
But see, I thought I had a lead-in question and I just lost it for a second. So let's go with another piece of news. Healthy scratch tonight is Gustav Nyquist out in Long Island. Jim, where do you hear that he might be going?
There's a couple places that he could go. Obviously, the big connection, Minnesota has been trying, as it's been reported, Minnesota's trying to be aggressive and try to grab Gustav Nyquist. I've heard Columbus being out here. The Columbus Blue Jackets would like to bring him back. He's a player that fit in nicely. He knows that young core there. They need a forward. Wow.
Well, I used to coin the phrase, I had an Amtrak train of thought. It got derailed.
Wow.
Oh man!
But I think Nyquist to Columbus, Minnesota, places he's been before. He's out there. He's good. He's out because of trade protection. He's a guy that can help a team, a contending team, at bottom. You can put him in your top 6 too. Can score goals and can do it all for you. And I think those are 2 teams I'd be looking at. 2 places he's played before, and they, again, Nashville's got to move out their rental players too. So. I think that's definitely going to happen. Now, will this make other teams think about what they have to do? Yeah, they should. A certain team that Anthony covers, the Islanders, will they do it? Probably not. Should he? Yes. but he won't. Will
I don't think he should.
Will Montreal start sitting players that they have of value? Maybe, but now with the Kirby Doc injury, that could change what they're doing. So, but I think Nyquist is moving, and he might move before the deadline. I could see it before it happens. Even by Monday, I could see him getting traded.
Yeah, and as Anthony brought up, trade season, even though putting up that the trade special is coming on Friday, because we're going to have a huge show for that. But also, it's more like trade week now. You get all these trades that they're coming down little by little by little. And I think we got in from Arizona late Thursday night, and we were able to at least missed a couple of big trades, but some of them were there. So I just wonder what the next domino is going to land or fall, I should say. But I can't believe that the Islanders are just going to stand pat. It's boggling my mind.
These guys will be joining us too. So the Ranger Central boys.
Nice.
So that'll be a fun stream.
And Jim, I'll send you that. That's gonna be a huge stream. Guys are gonna come on and off.
Yeah.
For that.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see who goes. I mean, obviously Nyquist, it appears it, because from all indications are his bags are packed and they're at the hotel finding out his next destination and where he's going. So I think that's a player that's definitely moving. From there, you have to. I think everything is gonna determine what's gonna happen is gonna be determined by the Islanders, what they're doing with certain players. I think Scott Laughton's probably a guy that gets moved, is definitely going to be moved. We saw the picture, the album cover. That was a great picture with the boys out in Winnipeg last night. That was great by him. So I think that's another player that could go. But again, I think a lot of the holdup is Brock Nelson, right? Like, he's the number one center on a lot of boards, and if he's not going to go anywhere, that raises the value for guys like Jake Evans, Trent Frederick, guys like that.
Yeah,
around the league.
Definitely would agree with that. I mean, like you said, domino effect, and it's market resetting once that happens. So if that piece falls off the board, because he's not being moved, then yeah, everybody else's value shoots up. So Montreal, is definitely hoping for that. I think that the Islanders should be dealing Nelson. I don't think they should be buying anybody unless it's a long-term, hockey trade. Then I don't think the Islanders should be buying anybody. I think they're too far away in the standings. I think it's a lot of ground to make up. I think this race is way tighter than it's been in any previous year that I can remember. And I just think there's too many injuries for them to overcome. Not having Matt Barzal for the rest of the season really, really hurts them. Mm-hmm. I think this is the one time where your old pal Lou Lamoriello, Jim, should be selling off some assets and, just kind of, just realizing that he's not waving a white flag, but he's making moves to better his team going forward. I get that he's like 80 and he wants another cup before he retires. But he ain't in here.
He ain't getting that cup. He had his chance in 2012 to get that cup, and it didn't happen. And let's be honest, after that team went to the final, he should have been resetting next year and didn't do it. Nope. After he lost the players that he lost on that cup run. But he's again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. He can't operate in this post-salary cap world. He still operates in a pre-salary cap world. Yes, he's added players to the Islanders, the Bo Horvat deal, right? You bring him in. But again, what else have you done to improve this team when everybody know for the last couple of off seasons goal scoring was a problem and you didn't address it, and you still need to address it? But Lou doesn't believe in the word sell, resell, retool, rebuild. And if his team is within striking distance, he thinks his team can get in the playoffs. I personally would be moving guys because they're not making the playoffs, but he's not. So.
Right. They got to get younger and faster. And I've been saying that for a long time.
Right.
By the way, everybody be careful when you go on NHL.com, because the headline article is about Johnny Gaudreau. Would have loved this. And because that game tonight, which I'm assuming you're in Columbus to cover that, right, Jim?
I am. I will be there at the game tonight.
That's going to be an awesome just spectacle. Can't wait to see that.
Jealous.
But as Bailey's pointing out right here, Dylan Larkin put the Red Wings flag at the center of the ice at Ohio Stadium.
Yeah,
A
he
little
did.
bit of an ode
Yeah.
to
Oh, man.
He said it's the worst building he's ever been in. Love it.
Bigger disrespect. That or Terrell Owens fucking going onto the Dallas Star in the middle of the field and celebrating.
that's the
flag
bigger
planting
disrespect.
at Ohio. Flag planting at Ohio State is bigger disrespect. Look, Fantilli said he walked over the logo in Ohio State multiple times. He is like, no, I don't want any part of this. Like, oh, the guys just hate this right now. They just hate it.
Oh,
Well,
man.
again, it's going to be quite a spectacle to see. I'm trying to think of the only teams not to be in an outdoor game. I know Utah/Arizona is one of them.
There's a lot of teams that haven't played in one.
Well, the Panthers.
That'll change next year.
That'll change next year against the Rangers. I'm actually thinking about
Seattle.
Seattle hosted one versus Vegas. So that's both of them. All the California teams had one. All the Midwest teams and
most of the league has had one.
Yeah, I think it's just those two teams. I think it's Utah/Arizona again and Florida. So Utah is going to be probably begging for a stadium series game soon enough.
Yep. It should be a good game too, like we talked about. Like there's heavy implications on this game. Like both teams are in the playoffs. Like you're tied at points. Playoff implications on this game. So this is a huge game.
Yeah, tremendous game, and everybody else is going to be looking at it because obviously, if it doesn't go to overtime, that's huge for the Rangers, the Bruins, even the Canadians, and the Senators. I still wonder. Going back to this trade for a second, I wonder if Chris Drury is going to be able to, reshape this team on the fly within a week. That's why, again,
tough to do.
It's tough to do, and especially when you look at the job that Florida did 2 years ago, they still needed to go through an entire season, constantly reshaping, and then Alex Lyon had to play out of his mind in order to get them into the playoffs. I understand stranger things have happened, but it's just not likely.
Just reminds me of the revisionist history with Sergei Bobrovsky. Oh, well, you should pay Igor $11.5 million because Sergei Bobrovsky won a cup making $10 million. Do we not realize that Sergei Bobrovsky's contract was a complete albatross up until this past season?
Up until the playoff run of 2023, it was an albatross because they were trying to move the contract.
Yep. Absolutely. And Alex Lyon got them in they played a game in
Mystery Alaska, baby. That's great.
Stevie Weeks gonna skate the river again.
Yeah, he's skating the river. It should be good. I think this is gonna be a fun game. It's gonna be a great atmosphere. Meredith Gaudreau is gonna bring out the Columbus Blue Jackets, so that's gonna be really cool from the tunnel. Just the sights and sounds of this game is going to be awesome, and I'm glad to be here. And I was glad to jump on with you guys to talk about this trade. Glad I was available to do it. I'm going to get ready to head over there to the game, and I appreciate being on here with you guys.
No, I appreciate you coming on with us, Jimmy.
Always good having you on, Jim.
All right, guys.
Have fun. Try to multitask.
And Jim, for you,
buddy, that's going to be a tough one.
No fireworks.
It's not doing it now. No okay.
Fireworks. That's okay.
All right.
Make sure you multitask, Jimmy.
Elimination Chamber, you know it. Take care, guys.
Take care, buddy.
Take it easy. We're gonna just slide that over, but actually, this would be great to do. Utah, doing a game at BYU Stadium. I love it whenever they do the football fields. I understand the baseball fields, they're a little bit closer. Mikey Red is asking, any interest in Aaron Ekblad in the offseason?
You know what? 29, just turned 29.
There we go.
If he's asking for a raise from 7.5, probably not, because he just gets hurt way too much. Too much. But I mean, again, another right side defenseman. Would he be this team's second best defenseman behind Fox? Yes. Would he be a cause for concern? Yeah. Look at his last 2 seasons. He missed 31 games and he missed 30 games. He's played 52 this year. I know I believe he missed some time this year. So, I mean, I worry about Ekblad just because he's had health issues over the years, like just big problems over the years with that. So,
and also just be wary sometimes about guys going into different situations. You had Brandon Montour, who's 2 years removed from a 73-point season, 28 this year in Seattle and a -12. So.
Yeah, I you know what? I didn't get that one with Vince Dunn with the season he had. I mean, Vince Dunn's 60-point season might not be, he might not be able to replicate that, but you got to watch adding crazy amounts of puck-moving defensemen because you can only put so many defensemen on a power play. And that's why, people talk about adding a guy like Jones. Like, I get it, but where are you putting him on the power play? Because that's where he's going to get a decent amount of points from is the power play. And no, that's why I said Vancouver when Anthony was talking about, Dobson for Pedersen. Why is Vancouver going to go add a defenseman that they're going to have to pay $8 million plus for when he's not going to play on that first power play unit because he's never going to surpass Quinn Hughes in that aspect? So I really do wonder about adding a Seth Jones or something like that. You got to, that's the type, if you want to get that type of defenseman, you've got to either make the Millard for Byram trade or you've got to develop that from your system.
And when you develop it from the system, you got the pay scale, which allows you to bring a guy up slowly and you don't have to shell out a ton of money for him. Because look at what Darnell Nurse is doing to the Edmonton Oilers right now. But I got to highlight this comment from Rich.
I don't understand why Edmonton gave him that much money. Good defenseman, but not nearly worth what $9 million that he's making.
Was that the season after he had 18 goals or something like that?
Yeah, he had a 9.25. Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh man, and he's got full no move for the next 2 years after this. Yeah, he had a 16 goal season. 2021, he had a Chikrin type year that year, and
that was the year that everybody was getting money, Phil.
Yeah, this was signed August 6, 2021. Oh man, that is not a good contract.
But before we get back to the Parsonen trade, just want to highlight this comment from Rich. First up, by the way, great to see you again, Rich. But Rich is saying, want to give all respect to Lindgren. He was a cyborg who gave every inch of his body to the New York Rangers. I'm going to miss him for sure. And look, he made Chuck Norris look like a wuss sometimes. And you can't win a Stanley Cup, I think.
No one that makes Chuck Norris look like a wuss.
But you can't win a Stanley Cup without a guy like a Ryan Lindgren who's giving his body the entire time. The problem for him and the New York Rangers is he's getting too expensive and his body is really going a la Dan Girardi 2017. And you can't just keep that up. For the Colorado Avalanche, he's going to be good for their stretch run. And hopefully his play is a little bit better because he was kind of lost. And I think about the Jordan Kyrou goal that was just awful against St. Louis, Vilk.
Yeah, he's had problems for the last couple of seasons or so. And again, another defenseman playing above his standing. You just can't do that. And he was another guy that was too small to be playing the way that he played every night. And while you respect him for that, his body's broken. His body's broken. I really don't think he's going to get anywhere near the 4.5 million that he was making this year. Like, I don't see it. I think teams understand, and they look at the eye test, and the analytics actually support the eye test completely accurately, and in the aspect that he was just not good. And you want to talk about the entire team not being good? Okay, fine. I'm not going to argue against that. Team's been crap. Whether or not it's because they quit on the coach or the GM, doesn't really matter to me. But this team has not been good. Ryan Lindgren has been one of their bigger problems. Igor Shesterkin has been a massive problem. Artemi Panarin has been a complete disappointment. Like,
yep.
At what point, do you start getting rid of these guys? I would look into moving Panarin this offseason.
That's going to happen. I'm saying it outright. That's going to happen.
I said this last night on Twitter. I said that, I think this is the type of year where Chris Drury is going to have another conversation with this guy. And we know that he had a conversation before the start of last year. And he basically kind of reamed Panarin out and was like, hey, you need to be better. Like, you need to be better. We need more from you. And I do think that Chris Drury is going to go to Artemi Panarin and is going to say, we're changing things up here. Like, we're not going to re-sign you. And I think if Artemi Panarin is smart, he sees the writing on the wall and says, you know what? All right, you're not going to re-sign me? Trade me in the offseason right now. And I agree with Matt here. It is time. No, not that. It's time to move on. It's time to move on. I think that goes for Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad as well.
I still think good luck with Mika Zibanejad. However, Chris Kreider is going to get moved. That's definite because they gave the money to Alexei Lafreniere and Igor Shesterkin.
Once Chris Kreider is moved, I think that opens up a door for Mika Zibanejad. I really do. I'm not saying it's guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed. But I do think that opens up a door, and I think that's really gonna hurt him. That's his best friend, and that's when I think that he's like, okay, you know what? Maybe things are changing here, and that's it. But I think this offseason is going to be a massive, massive offseason for this Rangers and team in terms of moves.
Let me ask you this question, and it's really the question I've kind of been going back over and over, and I'm pretty sure every Ranger fan in the chat, by the way, we have 350 of you watching right now. Thank you very much, guys. That they all want to know, is Chris Drury the GM that should be making those decisions?
It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, for me personally, I would purge everything, including him. I think he's a part of why this team has had the trouble that's had this year. I think he messed a lot of things up. But I think if he's making moves like this right now, I don't think they're going to be moving on from him this offseason. I think if they were going to do this and they were going to move on from him, they would have hired a new general manager already by now, and they would have given him time to come in and make those moves. So otherwise, the only other thing I could see is if they go and they fire him right at season's end, and they give that crew enough time to come in. And I'm talking like April. I'm not talking June. I'm talking April. Like once the season ends, and let's just say they don't make the playoffs, or if they make the playoffs and when they get knocked out, then they go ahead and they fire him and they bring in a new regime to start making those decisions. Because you got to remember, the new regime is going to go ahead and make draft picks at this year's draft or trade those picks. So you're going to need a scouting staff to come in and make their decisions, identify the guys that they want to get, and then you've got to go and you bring in, a group of people that are going to have the minds to make the moves to shape the direction of this franchise going forward. So it's a big decision to make, but I just feel like if they were going, maybe I'm wrong and it's something that happens, like I said, at the end of the season, but I feel like he wouldn't be making these moves if he didn't have some sort of future.
I'm torn on this a lot. And the fact that I'm torn on this, I was pretty much a Drury guy because I was an apologist for him because I thought Gorton saddled him with just dead weight. Jacob Trouba was dead weight a month into his contract. And looking at him now, then that the other thing also kind of to get at was Gorton built a finesse team. Drury doesn't want a finesse team.
Nope.
And he's been trying to make them a little bit more sandpaper and stuff like that. And yeah, I know I'm using the euphemisms that you always hear about stuff like that. But now he doesn't have Barclay Goodrow, and he's trying to make the Rangers a tougher team to play against. It's just, I look at what he kind of did with the youth, and I'm not happy with it. And that's one of those things. That's just one of those things I have trouble going back and forth on.
Hi, buddy.
And I love the analogy. I love using the term.
Richie's right here. Lindgren was aging like milk on a sidewalk. It was no doubt. But Rich over here was also right about this. How Drury did that, and that's what I was referring to before.
Yes.
Absolutely monkey wrench this season, 110%. Should he be fired for that? I mean, that's a good question. And that's something that the higher ups are going to make, whether it's Dolan or whether Sather's in Dolan's ears still. We don't know. I don't know.
And I understand what Matt's saying right here, where he's saying Drury wanted sandpaper, but he brought on the wrong sandpaper guys. No, Barclay Goodrow was a very good player.
Totally agreed on that. Totally agreed.
And Reeves was good for what he was when he was there.
Yeah.
However, Patrick Nemeth was never the answer.
No, Patrick Nemeth was never the answer. I like the Goodrow signing, but again, on the very stream when they signed him, the very first stream that we did after they signed him, I said that they needed to win on one of three fronts with that contract. Needed to win on AAV or term or trade protection. And they lost on all three. And that was the biggest problem I had. I liked the player. I didn't like what they gave him. And then Reeves, you know what? For what they brought him in to do, yes, they needed a guy like that because they needed a guy to say, hey, you know what? Nobody's going to mess with our guys right now. And even though Reeves really couldn't play much anymore, he was still a presence there and something in the locker room too. Guys like that can help change the morale in a locker room. And that's something that I think a lot of fans don't understand because they don't get to see it the way that we do sometimes. Sometimes they'll give you that insight, but a lot of times you don't see it. So,
and Phil, just to go further into that, what you're saying, it was right after the Tom Wilson incident.
Yes.
And the Rangers needed to have that guy to stick out his chest to go, you're never doing that again. I don't care. So,
well, one of the things I said about that was that when you bring in a guy like Ryan Reeves, everybody starts like chest out, muscles flexing, everything like that, because they know they got a guy that's got their back. So, you don't need to ruin my dreams anymore. Please, I know Brady is not coming here unless he requests a trade, but you know what? You never know. So we'll watch Ottawa. But to me, the biggest thing with Ottawa is that Michael Andlauer flipped out the way that he did over a Larry Brooks article. To me, that tells me that there's a little trouble in paradise there. So I don't know. I don't necessarily think that's a guarantee that he gets dealt or anything like that. So please don't take it as that. But I do think that it's telling that the owner flipped out over an article about another team suggesting that they go after that player and called it soft tampering. You obviously struck a nerve, Larry. Keep doing what you're doing.
I love the term soft tampering. So great. And well, maybe Ottawa should focus on making the playoffs for the first time in Brady's career.
Yeah.
Well, they're 4 points behind both Detroit and Columbus.
Just like the Rangers
heading into today. So they've lost their last couple. The race isn't. I mean, the race isn't over. Like the Islanders are absolutely waxing Nashville right now. So they're soon to be 5 points back, which is just one back of the Rangers. So it's. I think that's also part of the reason why maybe there's been so little trades up until today. I think there are so many teams that still feel that they're in it. I mean, you look at the East. I mean, you still technically Pittsburgh, Philly. Those teams are very much in the mix. Montreal, they're all in the mix. So that might be contributing to maybe why there's so little teams pulling the trigger right now. They literally want to wait to see where they're at, on Thursday night, the day before the deadline. So it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out. And I'm curious to see what the Rangers do after today. Like they made the trade today. Like if they were to lose to a team like Nashville, who look absolutely awful right now, I think that could possibly be the final push that gives Drury big. All right, well, I'm full-fledged selling now. If they were to lose to Nashville tomorrow.
And Anthony, that's what we talked about on Wednesday, that the Rangers they were going to lose to Toronto. I kind of made that call, even though, as Phil said, analytics and everything said that the Rangers were the better team that day. But then you beat Nashville, you beat the Islanders, and then you lose the Capitals before the trade deadline. That's like fool's gold. You're 2-2. You're thinking, all right, well, we're one player away. Show me the one player. Show me the one player. And I don't want to hear Brady Tkachuk. Obviously, he would be a great player to add on there. But you look at some of the teams that are in contention. Yeah. Todd McClellan's got Detroit playing well. They're still a -13 goal differential. Columbus has got a +7, which, by the way, interviewed Todd McClellan, but Dean Evason's been doing a great job.
Yeah, I still think the two teams that are in the wild card spot right now, Detroit and Columbus, if I had to pick between, like, if one of them if you were telling me one of them is definitely going to make the playoffs, I would tell you it's Columbus. I don't, like you just referenced Detroit's goal differential. I'm not a believer in Detroit. I still think Detroit's going to fold. I think they're going to fold like a cheap suit. I really do. I think they're going to drop out. I think, and a couple of weeks ago, Mark, we talked, Phil said both, teams make it. I think you just said just the Rangers. Not surprised. You always go for your boys. But
no, I had the belief in the goaltending and the defense. But
I said none of them. I think Columbus gets in. I do. I think Columbus gets in, but I don't think Detroit's going to get in. I think it'll be Ottawa. I know Boston's lost 5 in a row, but something still resonates with the Bruins with me. I don't know if it's because I think Jeremy Swayman's a lot better than what his numbers are this year. Maybe he finds his game, but something about Boston sticks out to me. But no, I think Detroit's going to fall out. I think Columbus might get in, but like I said, it's just so close right now. It's you can't. With that said, you can't count out the Rangers, can't count out the Islanders. I mean, you can't even count out the Flyers and the Canadians right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how the next 6 days go, because it could totally just either go up to 9th or you could fall all the way down to 15th. So it's going to be very interesting.
But I do think teams need to consider trimming the fat and at least making trades, thinking about the future, not just thinking about the present. look at what happened with the Detroit Tigers in Major League Baseball. They sold at the deadline, and then they ended up being a playoff team with an outstanding run. Is that likely to happen? Of course not. Because you look at, I know the simple math is you're looking at the standings and just going, well, it's a 4-point differential between the Rangers and the Detroit Red Wings or the Columbus Blue Jackets. And like I said before you got on, one of those teams is guaranteed to get 2 points today. And there's potential for a 3-point game. So
which would be bad.
Which would be very bad for the Rangers. But you also competing with the Ottawa Senators. You're tied with the Boston Bruins, which I'm sorry. I think the Bruins, this is just not them. And I think they might buy at the deadline because I'm not sure if Don Sweeney has enough pride to say we're going to not go for it this year.
By the way,
minus 28 goal differential.
Eric Tolsky laughs at this deal and puts Chris Drury on block for the rest of his.
Oh, let me check that deal. Kreider to Carolina for picking Mikko Rantanen.
Hangs up right away. Are you kidding?
Well, here's the thing. Can you sign Mikko Rantanen? He's asking for $14 million right now.
Forget about that. The Hurricanes are going to trade a 100-point player, Mikko Rantanen, for 33-year-old Chris Kreider. Come on, that's a joke. Look what they gave up to get him. If the Hurricanes trade Rantanen, they're going to get a top forward in return, like not a 33-year-old who's on possibly the downside. Just not going to work out that way.
And right now having back issues, so that's not a good thing either.
And honestly, at this point, I'm convinced. I have a feeling Rantanen has a destination in mind of where he wants to play. So I think even if the Hurricanes trade him, I don't think he's going to re-sign with the team that he's dealt with. I think he's going to free agency.
I think you got a good point with that one, Anthony. But I also think Rantanen is going to go for the highest bidder. That's what I really think. He's going to go and he's going to be like, and we got Filk back in. He's going to be like, if Utah offers him the most money, he'll go to Utah. He'll try to be the star out there. And by the way, speaking about which, Utah is right now, they're 2 points out of a playoff spot. And that's sort of like the playoff spot.
Yeah, Carol,
almost like nobody
would never do this, Romanello. Sorry, buddy.
Yes,
he would
that's
never
right.
do that.
Yeah.
Mark, did you highlight this one for me, by the way?
Of D'Angelo, Boquist, and Scott Perunovich. Who do you see on the Islanders roster?
Boquist and Perunovich are RFAs, so the Islanders hold their rights. So as long as they want them to be on the roster, they will, unless they don't tender them and they make them UFA. I tend to think that they both will. And D'Angelo is a UFA. That could go either way. And he's playing well. I mean, Lou might – honestly, all three might be. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if all three are.
I think the nickname my wife gave him was the Trash Panda.
Who?
D'Angelo. Sorry.
Trash Panda.
Yeah. By the way, 350 of you watching right now, everybody. Thanks for joining us both on X and on YouTube.
Why not trade? Yeah, I mean, and this is the risk with trading for Rantanen. As I just said, I think whoever he go, maybe with the exception of like Florida or Tampa, because I could just see him wanting to be there for some reason. Like I don't think he's gonna. I don't think it's a lock that he re-signs with the team he's dealt to. Like for instance, if he's traded to Dallas for a playoff run, does he sign?
All right, Corey, welcome to the show, buddy. But I will tell you this. If he's playing in your top four, you got problems.
But on the other hand, he's going to give 110%.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to give you 110%, but this guy's body is broken. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, can he do better with sheltered minutes? Yeah, definitely. But if you expect him to be a top four defenseman, I'm sorry, you're not going to get that out of him.
Finishing what Anthony is saying right there, would you expect wherever Rantanen lands, like you're predicting Dallas in your predictions, that they might flip him over there? Would you expect him to be signing anywhere? No, Anthony is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Anthony's predictions.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, they have the space to make it work. They do. And Rupe Hintz is there. Yeah, I mean you have a fellow Finn there. Miro Heiskanen is there, a fellow Finn. I very much wonder about Mikko Rantanen there. I think that could be a good fit. Florida, there's some Finns there too. Barkov, Luosterainen, Lundell, and Mikkola. I mean, he's got a bunch of Finns there. Nice weather almost year round. No state tax. Dallas is another place where no state tax. But yeah, I definitely think that there's definitely a good chance that he could go to one of those two teams. Dallas is going to have the cap space to do it because Jamie Benn, they bring him back. They're not going to bring him back anywhere close to the $9.5 million that he's making right now. Yeah. And then you have Matt Duchene coming off the books, even though that's only $3 million. I mean, can you convince him to take another $3 million contract to come back to Dallas, where he seems to be thriving?
Yeah. But Mark is saying, do you think Rantanen will sign with the team that trades for him, or do you think he'll still go to a UFA regardless?
Where do I think that Rantanen will go?
Like, no, I'm just saying if he gets traded at the trade deadline, do you think he's not gonna sign with that team either?
I think this guy is still going to go to UFA. I don't know if anyone's going to want to give him $14 million after seeing how he's played at the Four Nations and then, his lackluster play with Carolina so far. I have a problem with, giving him that type of money. Can he get that? Yeah. I just don't know about giving him that because I don't think he's going to be as productive away from McKinnon and Makar.
Well, the numbers kind of already show that his tenure in Carolina so far. So there's something to that. His points.
I think everybody needs to kind of pump the brakes on that though a little bit, guys. I as I put in the quote when we talked about this when they traded him, Phil Esposito said the biggest shock of his life was being traded, even over both parents dying. And I don't think Rantanen thought this was even a possibility. And the next thing he knows, he ends up in Carolina. Marty Natchez is getting his production over in Colorado. And it's like, all right, now what do I do? Because that's the real question. I almost compare this to Mike Piazza going to the Florida Marlins. And you're like, all right, you're there, but how long? And then a week later, he was traded, I think it was 2 weeks. He was traded to the New York Mets.
Some guys just feel differently about, it takes them a while to get acclimated and they want to see how they perform before they commit to a franchise. So that's what Rantanen's doing. With like Bo Horvat, for example, with the Islanders, he signed a week after being acquired. So
maybe even less.
Yeah, so some players just, they kind of want to feel things out, and I think I remember Horvat saying after the trade that in free agency the Islanders were a team that he had on his list. Maybe Rantanen, when thinking about his future, maybe he'd never had Carolina on his list. That's why he's kind of balking about the idea about signing there. He never even thought about them. So he's I don't know.
It could be a variety of things. I mean, from what I've seen with interviews with players, a lot of the things they talk about are getting acclimated to, a new scene, a new city, a new scene, a new team, and it's a new routine for them too. You got to remember, these are guys that are creatures of habit. They have their pregame routines. They have certain ways that they drive to the arena, certain ways that they go, certain ways to avoid, massive crowds, things like that. Every little detail matters to these guys. And when you change that up on them, they're learning to do all of this new stuff on the fly with a new team while trying to produce and live up to whatever contract that they're on at the time or whatever expectations that are doled upon them upon being traded. So this is big for Rantanen. I do think that he's going to still be over a point per game player. I have zero doubt about that. I just wonder if he's going to still be that 50-goal, 100-plus point player that he was with McKinnon and Makar, because you got to remember he played on a line with McKinnon, and he's either the second or third best player in the world. If you want to debate Leon Draisaitl, I probably would say number two for my money behind McKinnon. McDavid, but again, he plays on a power play with him and Makar. And Makar's probably the best offensive defenseman of this generation and of probably the last 20 or so years, if you want to argue Erik Karlsson.
Yeah.
So for me, you're losing two big point producers that can help you put up a ton of points. It's going to be a lot for him. And he's going to have to find chemistry with a new center. And that's going to be a big thing. Where does he go with someone that he can produce with? I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. If the price was cheap enough to the point where it was palatable for the Rangers, I would love to see him in New York playing with JT Miller. I think that line would absolutely wreak havoc, depending on who they have with them as a third player. I don't think it's going to happen, but I do think if you put him with a talented center that can make things happen, I think he's going to be all right. I would be very wary of giving him $14 million. If you told me $11 to $12 million for him, no problem. Sign me up.
I will point out, though, the season where he had 92 points and McKinnon missed, I think it was like 20, 30 games.
21, 22 season, I think you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. And then the following season, McKinnon was 111 points and or a little bit more. I have it right here. And Rantanen was still 105. So there's still value in there, and he does play well away from the big stars. And I know what David's saying right here. It doesn't seem to affect Natchez. Maybe it was mostly over McKinnon. Keep in mind, Marty Natchez wanted out of Carolina. He was requesting trades left and right. He wanted to get out.
He did, but then he ended up re-signing, and he had a change of heart. So.
Right, but then you're told, you're finally out. Then there's a pressure that's off of Marty Natchez. Yeah. Pressure was all on Rantanen after that. Now it's like, now you got to go there and, hey, wait, what's wrong with this? You're with a finished center. You have like a whole bunch of finished players over there, so you should fit in like a glove, right? But even though everybody's pointing out, his best fit with chemistry was with a Canadian. It's not just countrymen.
I think that Carolina's system may not be conducive to his type of game. They like to play a very up-tempo, high forecheck, high shot volume on net from the points. And that's why I think Sebastian Aho could even score more points away from Carolina, because they love to take that puck and go high to low, and they generate a lot of, I would call them almost like empty calorie shots, if you will, because it's a lot of shots from the point. Their analytics look great due to it, because analytics are all shot-based. So for me, I don't know if Mikko Rantanen actually fits in Carolina. And from the games that I've seen him play there, I don't know if he fits. I really don't. I'm not sure if there's a long-term thing there. And maybe that's part of it. Who knows? Maybe he thinks, hey, I don't like the way this team plays. It doesn't really suit my game. Maybe I'm gone. So I still think he's heading to free agency either way. And yeah, like you said, highest bidder is probably getting him. But I don't see it in Carolina. And if I'm Carolina, if I'm getting this inclination, especially with the way that he's played so far, I know it's a small sample size. Why not try to recoup picks and avoid Gensel Part 2? But at the same time, I understand the other argument for it, where you paid up to get this guy. Like, this is the guy that you wanted. He's a better player than Gensel, but why not just go for it at that point and use him as your own rental? I mean, I don't know.
And then kind of another thing that he's got to be thinking about is, look no further than the guy over in Calgary, Jonathan Huberdeau. Sure, he got his money over at Calgary, but his career has been the same since he's been there. He hasn't been a fit, and he's rebounded at least a little bit now, but it's not really the system on it that he fits in.
Yeah, and speaking of, systems and points, Richie, I saw your comment about Phil Housley too. You and I are never going to agree on Igor, and that's fine. But I do agree with you on Phil Housley and this right here. Muse runs the PK, and yeah, that PK has been phenomenal this year. At one point, they were first for a bit, so credit to Dan Muse and what he's done with that. But the power play has been awful. Perimeter point style, offense and dump and chase with slower players. I would say, even to add to this, a large refusal to play dump and chase for the most part. They want to carry the puck in it, over the line at every point, and their zone entry is not good because they don't have the burners to create great zone entry and back defenders off the line. There's no McDavid, there's no McKinnon. Artemi Panarin is not giving you that zone entry that he once gave you 3-4 years ago, where he was backing guys off the line and they didn't know what to do. He can make that pull-up play and make that pass. Now he's coming in and they're stepping up to him and he's making those dumb drop passes. So yeah, I would definitely agree that there needs to be a change. The issue that I've had with this is that Peter Laviolette is not fully to blame here. Chris Drury is also to blame for the way that he monkey wrenched things, as Rich Rotten said before. I think that's a big, big part of it. And I think they quit on the team for a while because of that, or they quit on the front office for a while, rather, because of that. But at what point do you kind of just give in to the players and just let the coach go? I mean, is this an off-season thing where they do an entire purge, which I'm welcome to? But Laviolette, I mean, it seems like they don't care about what this guy says anymore. They don't. But his deployment, what are you doing? You need puck movers and you don't play Zach Jones. You need a power play guy and you use 5 forwards instead of playing Zach Jones. Why?
Yeah.
I think Laviolette needs to go after this season. He's hurt himself. And I defended him earlier on, but he's really hurt himself as this season has gone by.
Yeah, and you still got to look at him and say he was a successful tenure with the New York Rangers, getting him to, an actual shouting distance of the Stanley Cup. I know you could say the same with Gerard Gallant, but the polish is off the apple right there. Let's start to wrap this up, guys, because we're about an hour and 37 in right here. Everybody's been great. 363 of you following. Make sure you're following us this week. We will have a giant trade deadline show that'll be coming in. I was going to go back to Anthony right there, and then he got up. There's one question. Anthony, we know we talked about it in our Bar Talk segment, but you do not foresee the New York Islanders making any trades.
No, and I want to the have to trade Nelson crowd. Like, I understand that he's getting older, but like what fans don't understand is like in their mindset, like the Islanders are a rebuilding team. They're not. That's not what Lou Lamoriello is doing. Like, he wants to keep Brock Nelson, so he's not going to move a guy that wants to stay there and he wants to keep. So fans can keep banging the drum, trade Nelson, but it's a made up thing. Lou's not going to trade him. He wants to keep him. He's only going to move if Nelson says no. But I don't think Nelson said no. I tend to think he wants to re-sign. They're trying to work it out. So if it doesn't happen by the deadline, I would move him if he's not signed by the deadline. But that's not how Lou operates.
Very dumb. Very dumb.
What?
Very dumb.
No, it is. But I'm just telling people how it is.
I understand.
This is how Lou operates. So he's not going to move a guy he wants to keep. He's just not going to do it. So
I understand what you're saying. It's just very dumb because you have a guy You're right. So the Islanders system is ranked in like the bottom 5, their farm system. They don't have a lot of prospect depth. Like outside of Cole Yzerman and Danny Nelson, where are your legitimate NHL prospects? Like nowhere to be found. Like you thought Ruslan Ishkakov could be a guy. He's not with them anymore. I mean, they've talked about Sebastian Aho, the other Sebastian Aho, I should say, and others, and Robin Salo and stuff like that, and guys that you thought were going to come up and help out, and they haven't really done anything. There's no depth here, and Nelson can get you a lot, especially because of the fact that he's the best center. This is the absolute time to strike while the iron is hot, because he's the best center available. He's going to be the guy that determines the market afterwards. I mean, I don't see how the hell you pass up on this. I mean, it's just, for me, it's the perfect opportunity. And if he's the stubborn guy that doesn't want to, and I understand you've told me about ownership, you've told me about Ledecky and Malkin and their stances and viewpoints and everything like that, but Lou Lamoriello not getting hauls for Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri with this team, the injuries they have right now, to me, that's one of the biggest fumbles in their franchise history. I'm sorry, but you have a chance to rebuild this team and move forward. What, because the 80-year-old senile general manager doesn't want to remove his head from his ass and do what's best for the club because his pride won't let him do it?
It all comes down to that he still believes that Nelson's a key contributor to the team and that he's trying to win. And he's not going to move a guy that when he's trying to win. He's just not going to do it.
Lou's hearing that one right now, guys.
Going on 34 next year. And honestly, he ain't going to keep getting better. Like, you're going to have to sign him to what? A 3-year deal? Because if you sign him to any more than that, you're risking him starting to decline with a big salary.
Yeah, I would say 3 years is probably about what he's looking at.
I need the Randy Orton, Kofi Kingston, stupid friggin' clip. Because
actually, the one I do have, it's in the editing bay, not really in here, is from the movie UHF. Stupid. You're so stupid. But
no, you need the Randy Orton, Kofi Kingston, stupid one.
That's
the one that really
it comes down to, I don't want to keep repeating myself. He's 80 years old. He doesn't care about a rebuild. He doesn't care about any of that. He wants,
and that's a problem.
Yeah, he wants to win. He wants to win, and he's going to continue to try to win until I don't know.
And if you're an evaluator of talent and you can't see that this team isn't good enough to win, then you need to step down. It is time for you to go.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying how he likes to operate. That's just
I'm with Chris T on this. You know what? 20 years ago, I would have said, yeah. You know what? I agree with you. 20 years ago. Now, nope. Not with the way he's been in the salary cap era. Salary cap era has really done damage to his reputation. Is he still going to be a Hall of Famer? Yes. Is he as good as everyone thought he was 20 years ago? No. The last 20 years have exposed him.
But even with that said, the Islanders, like, most prosperous era outside of the dynasty is the Lou Lamoriello era. Now, I think one thing that you're pointing out, Philk, and I think you're right about this in a way, Anthony is too, is Lou is that proverbial gambler that's like, I got a chip in a chair and maybe I can win with this. The problem is he needs to get up from the table, go work for about a week or two, figuratively speaking, and then you could go back and gamble again. The Islanders, for the most part, you want to look at them right now. They're second worst in the Metro Division, only 2 points ahead of the Penguins. And you look at their goal differential.
It's how you spin it. You just say that, but after beating the Predators today, they're going to be 1 point behind the Rangers. So
exactly,
everybody's in the same boat. everybody's in the same boat right now. So the clearer picture. So to answer this question, you're not going to have teams that are going to move players like this, I think, until
Gustav Nyquist trade.
yeah, I just see in the comments
to Minnesota.
Until Thursday. I mean, so the Islanders are now 5 points out of a playoff spot because they're going to beat Nashville. Depending on what happens in the game against the Rangers and depending what happens the game against the Jets, the two last games before the deadline, that might determine it. So, Christy, to answer your question, if the Islanders lose to the Rangers, lose to the Jets, then yes, I think Palmieri actually could be moved. If they beat the Rangers and beat the Jets and, bank 4 more points and who knows, or I don't know, 2 points out of a playoff spot, he's not going anywhere. So that's I think the next 2 games are going to determine what happens with Kyle Palmieri. You're not going to like the answer about Brock Nelson, but I think Nelson stays regardless of what happens, and that's what's going to drive fans mad. Palmieri, on the other hand, if they lose 2 games, I think Palmieri's gone.
Yeah, we talked about that in the Nyquist trade. It's for second rounder in 2026. Nashville retains half of his salary this year, so not a bad deal for Minnesota. I do think if Nyquist got this, I think Palmieri could get something close to that as well.
Yeah.
So definitely similar levels of play between those forwards. John Radigan, yeah. Emery's not had a great year in North Dakota. Anybody who's really kind of watched him any bit would know that he's not having the best year. So I would say, 3 to 4 years is probably, unless he really hits a spike in his development. I don't see him being available to the Rangers anytime soon. So,
but getting to the one point I was saying with that, Anthony, was you look at the Islanders also in that group of teams. I mean, outside of even with Detroit, you throw them in there because I'm always going to go back to goal differential. I think it's a great indicator on how your team is, and you can even interpret that stat a little bit. Islanders at a -14. That's right there with Detroit, and that's only behind the Rangers in Ottawa, and Columbus is the only plus team. Because usually, if you got plus goal differential, you end up making the playoffs. And was my comment that bad that Anthony left? But And I get what Anthony's saying too, because then they end up getting to 61 points, and you're like, oh, we're right there with the Rangers and the Bruins and the Canadians. But the problem is, you're still at least, let's see, at the moment, you're 7 points behind the Red Wings, and at least 5 points behind the Blue Jackets, or the winner of that game, I should say, today. So that's where you got to leapfrog a bunch of teams. And I don't think the Islanders are worse than the Flyers or any of these other teams, but sooner or later you got to make a decision on it. And I wouldn't feel good if the Islanders buy. As a matter of fact, as Anthony said the other day, if Lou buys, the Islanders might riot. Or the fans.
No, neither team should buy. It would be lunacy to buy.
The only way that they should buy is if there's long-term impact. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
If there isn't any long-term impact, then there is zero reason to buy for either of these teams.
Yeah, there's no reason to trade for a rental or anything like that. It was just dumb.
No, it's that neither of these teams are good enough. There's a chance that they both don't make it right now. I mean, the Rangers have put up piss poor efforts against teams like Pittsburgh, Buffalo. I mean, you can't beat those teams. You don't deserve to make the playoffs.
Yeah, you're right.
And as the rounder saying goes, if in the first half hour you sit at the table, you can't find the sucker, you are the sucker. And that's, I mean, you can't get destroyed the way they did the Buffalo last week.
No, that was, to me, that was almost like a death toll for them. I mean, they came back and they beat the Islanders. Okay, cool, fine. I mean, but the Islanders are a decimated team right now. I mean, they're without their number one center. I mean, their defense core is banged up as is. I mean, and then Ilya Sorokin really kind of shit the bed in that game.
Mm-hmm.
So It just, I don't like the way that things are going for either of these teams. I don't think that either of these teams should be doing anything in terms of buying. I think it would be just terrible for them to buy unless there's, again, long-term impact. If you're buying, if the Rangers go and get Trent Frederick, that's something that they have to sign. You have to sign him at that point because you can't use him as a rental. That would be stupid.
You almost, as a fan of your team in this situation, you almost have to hope for losses to take away the credit cards from the GM. And first up, by the way, thank you to Barry Trotz for making this trade while we were still on the air. But if your first round, all right, so as Chadwick Barry said, if your first round draft pick in Pittsburgh is a top 13, the second can help you move up. Yeah, but the problem is if it's a lottery protected pick they have for Miller, so they could go to next year. But yeah, that's a concern. If you got to root for being that high, I'm at a loss for words because I still couldn't stand some parts of those trades. But hey, Phil, I think I know we got a great audience, but I'm ready to wrap it up. How about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, this is about a 2-hour stream, so yeah, we got a lot out of this.
Yeah. All right. Again, we got almost 400 of you watching right now. Stay tuned for our trade deadline special, which is going to be on March 7th. If there's more breaking news, we might start even before noon. So everybody be ready for that. It's going to be a hell of a week. I was going to wait for Anthony to get back on, but Phil, give me a trade prediction that you can see happening.
I'm going to say Seth Jones to Dallas. I don't know about returns. I'll just give you destinations. I wonder if Yanni Gourde would go back to Tampa Bay. They could use some depth there. He could help, and he's familiar with them. I don't know. Maybe Trent Frederick to New York. Maybe to the Rangers. Maybe they want to get him and bring him in. Yeah. I don't really like that deal. Brisson in a second. And Brisson really, he hasn't done anything. I mean, I honestly don't think anything of him. Brock Besser is going to be an interesting one. He's one of the better players that's available. Let's see what happens to Carolina Ranton. Yeah. So
I'm gonna be bold, and I'm gonna say Brock Besser is a New Jersey Devil.
Ooh, that's interesting. I don't know. I don't know if they have the availability to make that happen. I mean, if they could find a way to move Andre Palat's salary, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. McLeod to Rangers would be nice. That would be something that I would be on board for. I mean, again, that's something that you're building for a future with, and that's the type of deal I could see them making. But I don't know. Yeah, Peterka. I mean, if they went like big with Buffalo and made a real change up type deal, like a big change up, I don't know if I'd be opposed to that. I really don't. I mean, is Lafreniere going in that deal? Is Keandre Miller going in that deal? I could see that, but I mean, then again, that might end up being an off-season deal. So, who knows?
All right, everybody. So we're going to wrap it up right here. Look, great show today for everybody that watched. And I was groggy. I'm like, I can't believe we're going to do a stream on Ryan Lindgren getting traded. But yeah, we did. And a good one at that. So there's going to be a lot more this week. We're going to break as many trades as we can as they happen. And who knows? Maybe everything might wait till Friday this year with so many teams in contention. So it's going to be interesting. And after all, last year, within minutes of the trade deadline, Tomas Hertl went to the Vegas Golden Knights. Mm-hmm. But Guys, again, everybody, thank you very much for joining us. We will see you at least Friday, but also Wednesday is our weekly show. Make sure you tune in for that. There's going to be a lot of things we're going to go on, and we're going to be going over the trade deadline too. But obviously, these games that are coming up, Rangers in Nashville and the Rangers Islanders on Monday. So everybody, thank you very much, and we will see you soon.